Today's daf is Chulin daf Tzadik Vav. We are 12 lines from the bottom of daf Tzadik Hey Amid Beis Boyamine Rav Huna Meirav. Today's daf is being learned as a schus refuah shalema for Shlomo ben Chaya Leah and Yisrael ben Adina. So we're moving along in Perek Yud Anasha, which we saw has a healthy balance of halacha and agada. Specifically, we're in the middle of a sugya which itself has a healthy balance of halacha and agada. That is Rav's famous memra, basar kivan shenesala min ha'ayin asar. That basar, it could be 100% kosher. Came from a kosher animal. It was slaughtered by a very chashiv shoichet. You did the nikor, everything that the shoichet's supposed to do, he did to perfection. Stating that this piece of meat was out of sight for a small period of time. Rav said a chiddush that halach is at that point, one will not be able to eat that meat. We made a big deal about Tosfos right in the beginning of the sugya that says that, what's the chashash? What exactly are you worried about? And Tosfos says you're worried about the ravens. Literally, the ravens. You're concerned that a bird, such as a raven, may have come, taken the meat that you had originally placed, wherever it is you placed it, swapped it out with another piece of meat. Where'd that other piece of meat come from? Anywhere in the world, and therefore, I don't know if the meat that I put here is the exact identical meat that I had left there. It's for that reason, says Rav, you can't eat the meat. If you were looking at it the entire time, you had a shomer, so to speak, then the halach is it's going to be okay. But to the extent that there was no shomer, at that point, it's basash and nesalam and ayin, which is awesome. Now, Tosfos says that from a da'iraisa perspective, and even from a d'Rabbanan perspective, the concern that a raven came and swapped out your pastrami with another pastrami, and the other one is not kosher, seriously, we're going to start thinking that? Well, then it's going to be pens down. We're not going to be able to walk anymore. We're going to be an ashrei adam mefachi tamid. It's going to create a level of paranoia that's going to be completely untenable. We're not supposed to think the unthinkable. Stating that in this world, there was a Chumra Yisera. Rav said that even though this really transcends the world of Sveikos in Kala Terakula, in the Sugis and Masechtes Chulin, when it comes to Basar, so soon it's not only Basar. There is an idea of Basar Shenesalam and I. Now, the Gemara had said that Rav had this very fancy Chumrah, which, by the way, this is in line with Shittas Rav, who we know was a big machmer. Over the years, we've quoted many times a brisa that talks about Asarim Mili de Chasidus, that Rav was noyek, 10 massive chumras that Rav kept throughout his life. So we know Rav himself happened to have been a big chumrah. Many of them he imparted amongst his talmidim and, the people that cared to hear what he had to say. But the Gemara says if this is true, that Rav holds basash and asalam and ayin is also, so how did Rav ever eat meat? So how do you eat meat? And the Gemara gave three possibilities. One possibility was that Rav would literally stand on the side of the butcher, steering at him and making sure that the basa would not be in the salmon. Additionally, when Rav would have meat delivered to him, he would make it come in a double seal, and it's for that reason he knew for sure, he trusted the shaykhit, that he's putting the right piece of meat into the proverbial shopping bag, so by the time it got to him, assuming it had all the appropriate seals, it was going to be okay. And finally, Rav would ask that his meat be cut in a very specific way. Meaning he had a siman in the piece of meat that this meat was kosher, and it's for that reason this was something that was going to be okay. Either way, today's daf is going to begin with a few chulin anecdotes that are all related to this general halacha of basash and asal manayin, and then at the very end, we're going to find out, so a little suspense and foreshadowing, whether or not we paskin like Rav. We all think we paskin like Rav, right? Whether we in fact paskin like Rav or we don't paskin like Rav. Says the Gemara, Rav Huna, who's a Talmud Muvak of Rav, he asked his Rebbe, B'charuzin mahu, what would be if somebody had meat and it was on a charuz? I guess in English you would say it was on a kebab of some sort. So he has meat. It's not just sitting on the counter, but it's in a very specific setting. It's on a charuz. And he was nisala. He forgot about it for a little bit of time. He comes back, it's still sitting where he left it on that charuz. Do you have to be concerned that the Erev came and took the kebab, replaced it with another kebab, or better yet, he removed the meat from the kebab and put it back on? How far does this concern go? Amalei, so Rav tells his Talmud, Al tehi shoita becharuzin. Rav Huna, even you're pushing it. Meaning, hareza simin, to the extent that it's on a charuz, that in itself is a simin, and you know that I hold that basar and salmanayin is not a problem, there's a simin. That's how I eat meat. That was one of the 3 terutzim that the Gemara gave, how it's possible the Rav himself was able to eat meat. But either way, it's interesting that Rav, who's so machmer in this Indian, here is Talmud Rav Huna, sounds like he's asking him a very serious question, right? Very tmimistic. He wants to know, what about becharuzin? And what's Rav's response? Al tehi shoita becharuzin. That's like a very, very silly question. Some have a slightly different version of how this went. It wasn't an exchange where Rav Huna asked Rav, but rather Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav, the way you have it in most of Shas, becharuzin hareza seven, that to the extent that the meat was on a charuz, it's going to be considered as a Rav Nachman in Harda, ikla the Gabi Rav Kahana lefum nahara. So Rav Nachman in Harda, as in the famous Rav Nachman, he once came to Rav Kahana, who lived in Fum Nahara. That's a place. But Mali Yom Kippuri, and he arrived on Erev Yom Kippur. Now Erev Yom Kippur, we know there's a mitzvah to eat. If somebody eats on Erev Yom Kippur and fasts on Yom Kippur, the Gemara says, Mala Olav Akasov Kihilu Isana Chiva Siri. He's going to get rewarded as if he fasted not only on the 10th day, but on the 9th day as well. So every piece of food that you put in your mouth on Erev Yom Kippur, ultimately you're going to be rewarded as if you fasted. Just thinking now, literally, as we're learning the Gemara, even though this is really not the sugya, Yom Kippur is a day of tshuva. We know if a person does tshuva me'ahava, zdoines nasas schuyos. On Erev Yom Kippur, we learn this lesson. Eat, eat, eat. Fres? Yeah, you're going to see, zdoines nasas schuyos, that every piece of food that comes into your mouth, ultimately you're going to be rewarded as if you fasted. But we digress. So again, Rav Nachman comes to Rav Kahana in Fum Nahara, and it was on Erev Yom Kippur. Also, Erev Shadi Kavdi V'chol Yisa. In the meantime, ravens came. So this chash that Tosfos said Rav, was so worried about, this really happened. They're like watching a sugya in real time. So Asi Arvi, ravens came and they started throwing liver and kidneys, right? They're the waiters at this kiddush here. Amalei. So Rav Kahana turns to Rav Nachman, he tells him, Shkol ve'achayel, chap, right? Go take. What does it mean? Shkol ve'achayel. Rav Nachman looked to Rav Kahana, how do I know where this meat is coming from? So he told him, Ha'idna dat teresh chiach tvei. He says, today most of the meat is kosher meat because all the Jews are fasting. For the non-Jews, this is just a regular day. And as a result, he said, I'm pretty confident that this food is kosher, and if that's the case, you are able to eat the food that's being delivered by the Arva. Rashi says, and this Rashi is at the end of the sugya, that you see from this story, the Rav Kahana did not agree with what Rav held, and that is that basa kivin shenesal manayin asa. Because if basa shenesal manayin is asa, number one, this basa is nesal manayin. It's being delivered by Arvim, right? And not just that, the whole point of basa shenesal manayin is based on the Arvim, and the Arvim are taking from Ruba da Alma. So based on that, you have to assume, just based on the method of Rav, that the food is probably not going to be kosher. And here you have the Arvim themselves depositing food, and Rav Kahana says, not because the chevra over here are all eating kosher food, so it makes sense it's kosher. Yeah, but what if it came from the other side of the Atlantic? You have no idea where the food came from. And if you're worried about Ruba da Alman, the Sugya Basash and Salman Ayin, well, based on that, there should be a problem. So Rashi says, you see clearly, the Rav Kahana disagrees with the Shita of Rav. He holds Basash and Salman Ayin is mutter. Tosfos, it's the top Tosfos of the Yomud. It's the second half of the Tosfos. Tosfos asks a kasha. How could it be that Rav Kahana said, Shkol ve'achol idnu dat teresh chiach tvei. But Rav Kahana is a Talmud of Rav, and Rav holds basa kivin shenesal manayin is going to be aser, and you always have to be concerned that it came from wherever it came from. And Tosfos has a little bit of a chiddush. Tosfos says that as much as we're concerned that the Arvim brought food, we don't think that the Arv just traveled 5,000 miles holding chopped liver. That's not what we're worried about. We're worried that it came from a general vicinity. And being that on Erev Yom Kippur, the whole general vicinity, you assume this is like a super ride because all the Jews are eating now. The food is probably for sure kosher. Even Rav himself wouldn't be worried over here. Rav is worried about the Arvim. He's worried about the food being swapped out. Things that maybe you and I wouldn't be worried about. Rav says, no, you have to be machmer. I think this is something you have to be concerned. But he also puts a little bit of a a limitation in terms of how far we're concerned the Erev is coming from. It's a general vicinity, whatever that is, and being that over here, the general vicinity was all kosher food, it's for that reason it was okay. But here's the point, Machlokes Rashi and Tosfos, whether Rav Kahana is going Deloy Kirav or Fakir Rav Kahana Ketchtim with Rav. Another story. Rav Chiya bar Abba Isfad Le Karkasha Beidana. So Rav Chiya bar Abba lost the karkasha of his animal amongst his barrels of wine. What's a karkasha? So in English, it's the colon of the animal. Also, the Kamei Rav Huna, he came to Rav Huna, and he told Rav Huna, and I'm going to look for the karkasha of the animal. I hope I find it, but my question is, if I find it, will I be able to eat it, or will I not be able to eat it? What's the question? Well, if it was lost, it was Basar Shena Salman Ayin. Amalei, Rav Huna told him, Islach Simna Begaveh, do you have a simin? Amalei Loi. Islach Tfias Eina Begaveh. Do you at least have a Tfias Ayin? Meaning, not all of these colons look the same. So if you see it, will you recognize? You say, oh, this is the karkasha of my animal. Amalei in, he told him yes. He says, then you're going to be able to eat it. So you see two things from this story. Number one, Rav Huna holds like his Rebbe Rav, as we saw at the very, very beginning of the Gemara, Basach and Salman Ayin is going to be a problem. Another thing you see over here is that a simin would make it go away, but that we knew already. The real chiddush is that a tfias ayin would also make it go away. So just to set this up a drop, because this is going to be the balance of this part of the sugya. So in the world of simonim, so there's something called a simin. A simin is an identifying mark. It's very black and white. It's very specific. A tfias ayin means I don't have a identifying mark, but I know it's mine. You walk into a coat room, or better, you go to a hat rack and you see a whole bunch of black hats. You have a simin that this hat is mine? No, but when I see it, I know it's mine. I have a tfias ayin in it, right? So there's something called a simin, and there's something called a tfias ayin. The most prominent place where the simin and the tfias ayin are discussed is in Perikei Mitzias. The halach is that if somebody loses an aveda, someone else finds it. If you have a simin, simanim deiraisa, simanim derabbanan, one of the biggest sugis in Shas, the halach is you get to claim whatever it is you lost. The Gemara says, a tzurba mirabbanan, someone that's a Talmud Chacham, he can claim an object, even if he doesn't have a simin, just based on a tfias ayin. If he says, I know it's mine. I know it's mine. You have a simin? Nope. I know it's mine. This is my wad of $10,000. I know, I'm very confident that this is mine. So the halacha is only Sorba Mirabanan. We'll see soon why. But yeah, based on that, you'd be able to get it. In this Gemara, you see that just like Simin works when it comes to Basash and Zalman Ayin, Tvias Ayin also works when it comes to Basash and Zalman Ayin. Another story, very similar story. Reb Chanina Chayza, Isvad Le Gabed B'S Reb Chanina Chayza, he lost not the colon of his animal, the back of his animal. Also, the Rav Nachman, he came to Rav Nachman, not to Rav Huna, but to Rav Nachman. Amalei Islach Simin the Begavah. You say, you have a simin? Amalei Loi. Islach Tvias Ayin Begavah. So Rav Nachman said, do you have a Tvias Ayin? Amalei In. He said, yeah. And Cain, he told him, Oy Bazai Zil Shkoil. Then, if you want to go ahead and take it, you'd be able to take it. Rav Nassan bar Abaya Isvad Le Kibur de Tchelta. Rav Nassan bar Abaya lost his spool of Tchelas. Tchelas as in Tchelas, of Tchelas fame, right? The Tchelas that was used for tzitzis. Also, the Kamei to Rav Chisda, he came to Rav Chisda, and he told Rav Chisda that, I had lost my Tchelas, and I found it now. I just don't know if it's the same Tchelas. Now, what's the concern? It's Tchelas. We're not dealing with Basar. And if it looks like Tchelas, isn't it probably Tchelas? So the answer is no. Because we know there was the real Tchelas and there was the fake Tchelas. The fake Tchelas, in the words of Chazal, was called the Kala Ha'ilan. In English, it's known as the indigo. And very often, people would swap out the real and the fake. The real one was a lot more expensive than was the fake. And this was the Shiloh. So Nasser bar Abaya goes to the great Rav Chisda and he tells him, I lost my Tchelas. I found it. I just don't know if it's the real one. Meaning, the real one I knew was real. I paid a lot of money for it. I watched it, apparently not well enough. But now that I just found this new spool, is it okay or is it not okay? So Amalei Rav Chisda told him, he went to work. Islach Simna Begaveh. You have a simin? Amalei Loi. I mean, to me, it's just a spool of bloyavol. Islach Tfias Eina Begaveh. Do you have a Tfias Ayin? Amalei, yeah, I actually have a Tfias Ayin. So he told him, you'd be allowed to take it. What do you see from this Gemara? That the concern, the paranoia that underpins the halacha of Basar Shen Salam and Ayin is not only true for Basar. It's not exclusive to Basar, but you see it would be true even for the idea of Tcheles and the Kal Ilan. This is another situation where there's the good one and the bad one. They look exactly the same. There's a lot at stake. You have to make sure you get it right. And just like by Basar, Ad kedei kach, we're worried about the raven. It sounds like when it comes to tcheles, it would be the same thing. Amar Rava. Rava said, Meireish havamina. I used to say, which by the way, this is a theme that we've had throughout this cycle of Daf Yomi, the before and afters of Rava. So Rava said, Meireish hava amina, I used to say, Simna ada petfiyas eina, that a simon is better than a tfiyas ayin. That all day, any day, when it comes to a sugya of simon tfiyas ayin, simon I always thought is better than tfiyas ayin. Why? Because if somebody loses an object and now somebody else finds it, if you have a simon, you're going to get it. But if you have a tfiyas ayin, with the exception of a tzurba mirabana, with the exception of Talmud Chacham, you're not going to get it. So I always thought that Siman is better than Tfiyas Ayin. Why? Because I always learned Eilu Metzias. I knew from the second parak of Masechtas Bava Metzia, children learned this already in 5th grade in some yeshivas. I knew the idea that a Siman works, Tfiyas Ayin works, and Siman is much better than Tfiyas Ayin. And how do I know that? Because for the man on the street, if he has a Siman, he can claim an object. If he has a Tfiyas Ayin, he cannot. But now that I heard everything that I just heard, what did I just hear? Rashi says, Top Rashi, the shori iser b'tfiyas ayin, that you can be mater iser with a tfiyas ayin, that basash and a salmon ayin, which is iser, you can be mater with tfiyas ayin, chelas, which is iser, you can be mater with tfiyas ayin. Oh, if you could be mater iser b'tfiyas ayin, and by the way, even if you're not a tzorba mirabanan, even if you're not a Talmud Chacham, oh, now that I know that, amina tfiyas eina adifa, I think tfiyas ayin is actually better than a simon. I always thought for sure simon is better than tfiyas ayin based on Eilu Metzias. But now that I'm learning Chulin, so I see that tfiyas ayin works when it comes to Isser, and if tfiyas ayin works when it comes to Isser, now tfiyas ayin is already better than simon. Now there's a very obvious question that jumps off the page. Every Rishon asks the question. What's the question? The question is, just like tfiyas ayin works when it comes to Isser, simon also works when it comes to Isser. If that's the case, where does Rava see that tfiyas ayin is better than Isser? In Eilu Metzias, simonim is better than tfiyas ayin. In Isser, simonim and tfiyas ayin are the same. So, if anything, simonim should still be better than tfiyas ayin because it has a leg up in the sugya of Eilu Metzias. Or at the very least, you should say that they're the same, v'haraya, that they both work when it comes to Isser. Why, when it comes to Eilu Metzias, is it different? It's a question. We'll address it in 1 second. But the point is, where do you see that tfiyas ayin is better than simon? Simon is better than tfiyas ayin and Eilu Metzias, and they both work equally when it comes to Isser v'heter. So if that's the case, all the Rishonim ask, where did Rava flip 180 degrees? He always thought Simanim is better than Tfiyas Ayin. Then he chab Tfiyas Ayin is better than Simanim. What Rava should have said was, I always thought Simanim is better than Tfiyas Ayin. Then I realized they're one and the same. But either way, this is what Rava said. Rava said, I now know from learning Masechtas Chulin that Tfiyas Ayin is actually better than Siman. Freak Rashi, the obvious question, if that's the case, what's Takib Shad in Eilu Metzias? For the average person, a Siman works and a Tfiyas Ayin doesn't work. If you're going to tell me that Tfiyas Ayin is better than Simanim, so V'haloi Davaru, it's a Kal V'chaymer. Ma Simanim, Hakal works. So Tfiyas Ayin HaChama should certainly work. Rashi says you have to say that when it comes to money-related issues, their things are different. And the only way, unless you're a tzorba mirabana, you would be able to ever get money from somebody else is in the event that you're able to provide a simon. And the reason is because we wouldn't trust your tfiyas ayin. Meaning, tfiyas ayin, when we trust you, adaf misimanim. But how do I know to trust you? If you have a simon, that's my way of knowing that you're telling the truth. If all you have is a tfiyas ayin, tzizul gonna leave, I don't know if you're telling the truth. Says Rashi, the issue when it comes to Eilu Metzias is not the power of Tfiyas Ayin, it's do I trust you? And when it comes to money, we don't just trust people. You know what? And Rashi quotes, he invokes the famous Gemara, Gezel v'arayas nafshe shalodam misavelem m'chamdasa. And being that Eilu Metzias is a monetary related issue, there's a trust issue with the exception of the Tzurba Rabbanon, who we know is telling the truth. Over here we're going to be able to trust. But the bottom line is, Rabbi said, I used to think Simanim was better than Tfiyas Ayin, and then after learning this sugi, I came around, I see that Tfiyas Ayin is really better than Simanim. Says the Gemara, the Iloi Temahachi, and this is a little tricky. So what's the Iloi Temahachi? The Iloi Temahachi, that Not that Tfias Ayin is better than Simanim. This is not a continuation of Rava's conclusion of our sugya. But Ilay Tema Hachi is another raya in support of what Rava saw in our sugya that led him to his conclusion. The Ilay Tema Hachi, that Tfias Ayin works in the world of Yisurin. So again, we know Tfias Ayin works in the world of Yisurin from Basa Shenas Salman Ayin and from Tchela Shenas Salman Ayin. But now the Ilay Tema Hachi is going to bring another raya, and this is like a checkmate raya. Because if you're going to tell me that's not the case, hey, how is a summa allowed to be together with his wife? Tashmish Amita ubnei adam ich mutar mishneim balayla. When really, how's anybody allowed to be with his wife at night when he can't see? Meaning, how does the summa or how does the person at night know that he's with Ishtai? Ella, you have to say, B'tfias Eina, the kala. You're being soymich on Tfias Ayin, the kala. Hachanami, so to here, B'tfias Eina, it works with Tfias Ayin. Meaning, the point is, you see from all the Isha related to Ginyonim, that there's a concept of a Tfias Ayin, even though that's Issa the Heter. Meaning, what Amiram said, that when it comes to Basash and Asal Mayim, Tchilash Namad Ayim, Tfias Ayin works, it has to be that way. The Ilay Tema Achi, because if not, Heich Suma Mutab Ishtai, and Eich Pnei Adam Mutar Mishnei Balayim. Now, as it relates to this one line of Gemara, we've spoken about this so many times. There are many related rebites. Last machzor on this stuff, and really, in the end of Masechtas Yivamis, the Aguna-related questions, we always focused on it from the standpoint of Tfias Ayin the Koil. This idea that you find Tfias Ayin the Koil. The Ramban is Pirush al HaTorah with regards to the brachas, Yaakov and Esav, where the Ramban says that maybe they had the same voice, and people are able to fake voices. A fascinating discussion. Machlokes K'tois and Nesivas, whether Tfias Ayin the Koil works in Hilchas Eidos. Again, massive sugya with a lot of related rebites. We go weiter. Rabbi Yitzchak Breder Misharshia said, Teda. Now, what's this Teda? It's different than the Ilay Tema Hachi. Teda to Rava's conclusion. Teda that Tfias Ayin is better than Simon. If two people would walk into Bezdin and they would say, Planya the Hay Simon, the Hay Simon Katal Nafsha. You know, I just witnessed the homicide. Who's the Reitzach? I have no idea. I have no idea, but I know he has a simon. He has something on his cheek, he has something here. They would come up with some sort of simon. Like Atlinale, you wouldn't prosecute somebody based on that. But the Ilu Amri, but if two Adam would walk into Bezdin, they would say, you know, I saw Ruvain kill somebody. How you know it's Reuven? You saw his birth certificate. I know him. He's Reuven. I came from Smedrish. I went to yeshiva with him. I know he's Reuven. He's the person that did it. Meaning, Ilu Islach Tfias Ayin B'Gadev. He would say, I have a Tfias Ayin Kotlinalei. So what do you see? Just common sense. You see, Tfias Ayin works better than Siman. Rav Ashi always gets the last word. He took it even further. He said, Teda, I'll prove to you even more. Again, it's another Teda that Tfias Ayin is better than Siman. Because if somebody would go over to his shliach, right, his Gaba, old school, and he would say, Karya leplanya da haysimana v'haysimana. I want you to call Ploini. Who's Ploini? He has this and that simon. Safik yodale, safik la yodale. Right? It's not so clear that this Gaba is going to be able to call him, because the simon? Maybe two people have the simon. Right? He's not going to have the confidence that he's calling the person that his boss told him to call. But if someone would say, call Ruvain, how do I know he's Ruvain? He's not wearing a name tag that says Ruvain. I know him because I have a Tfias Ayin. Okay, when he sees him in skin, I know it's him. So it says Rav Ashi, this is not so complicated. Tfias Ayin, we just know from common sense, daily life matters, that it's better than Simanim. Again, what's the big kasha? When it comes to Elam Metzias, it's the other way around. That's because we don't trust the guy. It's a trust issue. But for sure, when we trust that the person's not lying, for sure, all day, every day, Tfias Ayin is going to be better than Simanim. And this here concludes the Sugya Basash and Salman Ayin. So it started on Daf Tzadikei Amid Aleph with Rav's Memra. It digressed into a lot of Divrei Agada. And then we got involved in the Sugya of Simanim. It's one of the places in Shas that Simanim are discussed. Second parak of Bava Metzia, the end of Masechtas Yivamis, elsewhere as well. And here you have it in the context of Basar. The idea of Simanim and Tfias Ayin, and ironically, even though when you learn Elam Metzia, Simanim is better than Tfias Ayin, but really, like Rava proved from our sugya, when it comes to Issa v'Heter, it's the other way around. When it comes to Issa v'Heter, Tfias Ayin is better than Simanim. Rava seemed to have seen it in the sugya Basash and Salman Ayin. All the Rishonim jump off the page; they don't know where they see it. We're in the fact that Simanim works and Tfias Ayin works, that in and of itself is a riot. Tfias Ayin is better than Simanim. Makshan or Rishonim, I don't hear that. But at the same time, Lamaskana Sagamar, there were two Tedas. Amr Rav Yitzchak Breder Misharshi, a Teda from Hilchas Eidos, and Amr Rav Ashi Teda from Hilchas Shluchim, just from Hilchas common sense. So Rav's Memra of Basash and Salman Ayin was the topic of the majority of yesterday's daf and the first half of today's daf. So do we paskin like Rav? Do we paskin Basish and Asalam and Ayin? Or do we not? So if you take a look at Rashi on Daf Tzadik Yomid Beis, it's 4 lines from the bottom. Rashi says as follows: Rav Huna Sfir le Kirav Rabbe the Asa B'Halama. Rav Huna was one of the Amiram in the sugya that held that Basish and Asalam and Ayin is Asa. And it stems because Rav Huna is a Talmud of Rav, so he holds like his Rebbe that it's going to be Asa. Abazok Rashi V'loy Kaimalon Kavase Baha. We don't paskin like Rav. Elo amasnisan samchinan. We're soymech on the Mishnah that said nimtza b'gvulin, that in the event that somebody finds a piece of meat lying on the ground and it's outside of Yerushalayim, matzah ba'basar, the halacha is that you'd be allowed to eat it. V'af al gaf tishaninu ba'oimid v'royeyu. And even though the Gemara had brought that Mishnah to ask on Rav, but the Gemara ultimately answered. And what was the answer? That it wasn't just a piece of meat that you found on the side of the ground, but the person was, in the vatins, and you actually saw it fall from him. But the point is, this was not your classic Basash and Asalim and Ayin. Abazak Rashi Shinuye Dechiki. Those terutzim are Shinuye Dechiki. It was a very and in fact all the terutzim that the Gemara gave on all the kashas that the Gemara asked on Rav yesterday. Zak Rashi, let's be honest, Shinuye Dechiki. These were forced answers. They're not really such good terutzim. Says Rashi, and therefore I think this pashtus of the sugi, the way I came out yesterday, was not like Rav. Says Rashi, you asked me another question. Rabbi Suri, don't we paskin like Rav when it comes to Isser? Says Rashi, yes, but only in certain cases. It's got to be pluked to the Shmulhu, the Amrina. That's only true if there's a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel. But not if he's going up against a Mishnah. And as far as I'm concerned, Rav's a shtickle going up against a Mishnah because the terrorist, the only way to make Rav work with the Mishnah is by saying Shinui Dechiki. For Rav Kahana, and besides, says Rashi, Rav Kahana, Hakachazina, the Amalei Shkol, Rav Kahana with the story where the ravens literally came and were, serving meat on Erev Yom Kippur. You see that Rav Kahana said you could eat it. And this is the Rashi that we mentioned in the Gemara. Clearly it's because Rav Kahana holds there's no problem Basash Shalom and Ayin. So says Rashi, it's for that reason, Loi Kaimelon Kavas. It's after the entire Sugya. Rav, the Talmidim of Rav Huna, Rav Nachman, they all held Basash and Asalim and Ayin. Abazak Rashi, we don't pass in that way. Because there was a bunch of Shinui, the Chiki, and don't tell me, it's a Hilchas HaKavase, the Rabbi Yisuri, because that's only true if it's Keneged Shmuel. This is not a Sugi that has anything to do with Shmuel, Fakir. If anything, as far as I'm concerned. This is machlokes Rav against the Mishnah, and also you see Rav Kahana held that way, and it's for that reason Rashi paskins that Basash and Asalim and Ayin is mutter. This is not going to be a problem. Stating that, if you open up a Shulchan Aruch, and this is in your Ideya, it's in Siman Samech Gimel Tzif Aleph. Just read the sif. If somebody finds meat that was out in the street, you can assume that this meat came from wherever the majority of the meat in the shuk comes from. The chol de parish, meiruba parish. Let's say most of the moichrim are goyim. Aser, them hayu moichrim Yisrael mutter. Or if there's a guy who's holding on to a piece of meat, and you don't know who the guy bought it from. If roiv the moichrim Yisrael mutter. Zeodin Torah says the Mechaber stating everything that I just told you. This is only midday raisa. Of the Kfar Asru Chachavim, the Chachavim got involved and they said, Kol Abasar Animtza, Bein B'Shuk, Bein B'Yad Goy, Afal Pisha Kol HaMoichrim V'Chol HaShoich in Yisrael. The halach is it's going to be us. V'Loi Oy, this is what we need. Ela Halikeach Bas if somebody buys meat. V'Hinicha B'Beisai. He bought it. He didn't lose it. He didn't find it on the side of the street. He didn't take it from a guy. He put it in his house. It was basash and asalim and ayin. Aser, it's going to be aser. Elam kain hayoloi boy simin. Only if he had a simin. It's only in that situation it's going to be mutter. But other than that, this is going to be basash and asalim and ayin. And if that's the case, it's going to be aser. Says the Vilna Goyen and Bir Agra. It's because the Shulchan Aruch, and it's really based on the Psak of the Rambam, holds that the halach is like Rav. The Chem Mashma, the Perik Beis, the Bava Metziah, says the Goyen. It's Mashma that way in Perik Metziah, Tafchav Dalad Amid Beis. The halach is Rav. The Sugi, the Gemara Parich, V'amar Rav, in the Sugi of Simarim and Tfiyah Sayin, as it relates to a Metziah, and Elo Metziah, the Gemara over there in the Shachal B'Tayah asks the Kasha, didn't Rav say, I thought we don't paskin like Rav. That's a raya we pass on. B'chein mashma b'soif yontiv be'ed daf mem amad aleph uvdid Rav Chana v'chulu v'ayna gois maimini perik ches sham. But the bottom line is that Rashi said from the sugya it's a little bit mashma to me, not like Rav. Halacha, we do pass like Rav, and the Goyin says it's not so much based on the sugya and Chulin. When the Goyin brings support for why we would pass like Rav, so for this already you have to have bikiyas. This is already a sugya and perikel metzias. Misach is beya daf mem. It's really based on under sugyas. So again, basach and a Salman ayin, which is something that we all very very familiar with. Just so happens it's machlekes rishonim whether or not we pass in this halacha. Rashi, the great Rashi, holds no problem with Basach and the Salmanai. Fascinating. That means in Rashi's court, if you would ask Rashi a Shaila Basach Salmanai, he would tell you, full stop, this is going to be mutter. Abala halacha, Shulchan Aruch, it's gepaskin, that Basach and the Salmanai is very much an issue. Either way, on that note, we return to our regular program, and that is the sugyas of Gid Hanasha. Sagt the Mishnah, Hanoitel Gid Hanasha, if somebody is being menaker, so he's removing the Gid Hanasha from the thigh of the animal. He's removing the sciatic nerve. He has to get the whole thing out. Meaning, he has to surgically remove it. Rabbi Huda says, no, you don't have to get everything out. It's Kedei L'Kayim by Mitzvahs Natila. You just have to get out enough to be Mikayim, the mitzvah of Natila. I think it's Kedai to explain this part of the Mishnah. It's going to be the topic of the first part of Gemara. It's also related to a brisa that the Gemara brought already a few dafin ago. And that is, we're going to see, Midai Raisa, everybody agrees that you don't have to surgically remove every last trace of the Gid Hanasha. As long as you remove the top part of it, that in of itself is going to be okay. Stating that, if you remember, there was a brisa, Machlokes Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, whether the Rabbanan were moisef ha'hoilech. And the Rabbanan said that you have to be mechatet, you have to go and you have to weed out more, or maybe the Rabbanan never went ahead and they never said anything like that. Rav Meir held that the Rabbanan were moisef and they said you have to take out more. Rabbi Yehuda said no, there's a din d'oraisa, the Rabbanan were never moisef on the din d'oraisa. Rashi, right here in the Mishnah, says that the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda in this Mishnah is Rav Meir and Rabbi Yehuda of the brisa that the Gemara brought earlier in the parak, which makes sense, because number one, the Tanakama is a Stam Mishnah, which is Rav Meir, and also Stam Bal Plukta of Rabbi Yehuda is Rav Meir. So, the Tanakama is Rav Meir, he holds Sarchi Tevel Skuloi, because even though Midei Raisa, there's a share of how much you have to take, but the Rabbanan were moisef. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer, Kedei L'Kayim by Mrs. Natila, the Rabbanan were not moisef anything. So all you got to do is what the Torah mandated you to do, and once you do that, that in and of itself is going to be okay. So, if somebody eats from the Gid Hanasha, Kezayis, Seifig Abraham. Eat a Kezayis, that's the shear, always a Macholis Asuris, you're going to get Malchus. Achle ve'en by Kezayis. Let's say somebody ate the Gid Hanasha and there was no Kezayis, Chayev, you're still going to be Chayev. I thought you have to eat a Kezayis in order to be Chayev. If you eat a Kezayis, even if it's not the whole Gid Hanasha, you're going to be Chayev. What the next line of the Mishnah means is that if you eat the entire Gid Hanasha, even if it's Pachas Mikazayis, that in and of itself is going to be enough to be Chayev. What happened to the Halach of Kizayis? This is based on the din of Beria. That if somebody eats a Beria, you eat a complete organism, right? Something whole and complete, that gives it a chshivas, and even if it's pachas kazayis, right? The reason we always talk about kazayis less than kazayis is because we need an achila chashuva. It's not the kazayis, right? This has nothing to do with olives. This is about an achila chashuva. Usually you need to eat a kazayis of something in order for the achila to be considered chashuv. Here the chiddush is that if you eat something whole and complete, this beria, it's considered chashuv, even though you did not eat a kazayis worth of it. Achal mizek kazayis. What if somebody eats from the two thighs, a kezayis of this and a kezayis of that? Soifik shmeinim. Oh, you ate two Gid Hanashas, right? Good for you. The bad news is you're getting malchus twice. Rabbi Yehuda said, "In his soifik el Rabbi Yehuda holds you only get malchus 40. We've seen Shittas Rabbi Yehuda already several times. It's pshat in Rabbi Yehuda because Rabbi Yehuda holds that the isser is only on one. Was he misupik which one it was? Is it the right thigh? But the bottom line is Shittas Rabbi Yehuda that kipshuta it's only the right thigh and it's only one of the Gid Hanashas that are aser. It's for that reason you're only going to get one set of malchus, 40 malchus. Bar Piyuli have a koik hamedishmol. Bar Piyuli. You don't see Bar Piyuli every day in Shas. So he was standing in the presence of the great Shmuel. And he was a menaker and he was removing the Gid Hanasha from the thigh of the animal. And and he was only like skimming it from the top. He wasn't surgically going into the kishkes and removing everything. Amalei, so Shmuel told him, Chuspei Tfei. He says, what are you doing? Come on, you're a lousy surgeon. You got to go further in, and you got to take more out. Hashtaloi chazizach svisaloi yisura. Says, you're lucky I'm watching, because if I wasn't watching right now, he said, you know what you would have done? You would have been machshel all the people around you with machalas asuros. So the Gemara says, Irsis, when Bar Piyuli got this musar from Shmuel, he got so scared, nafal sakina miyadeh, right? He dropped his knife, all his kalim, all his tools, everything fell on the floor. Amalei, so Shmuel told Bar Piyuli, lo yisirsus. He says, you don't have to be worried. The Eirilach, Krab Yehuda Eirilach, because you were doing something okay. You were following Shitas Rab Yehuda, and being that you were following Shitas Rab Yehuda, it's okay. In other words, there's a machlekes in the Mishnah, Tanakam and Rab Yehuda, how much you have to go pull out in order for it to be considered a proper removal of the Gid Hanasha. The Tanakama holds you got to remove all of it. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, just take off the part that biblically you have to take off. So whoever taught you, whoever trained you, he was good. He was a Rabbi Yehuda follower. I grab the old. You have to be machman like the Tanakama, and it's for that reason. But you don't have to be so tzeshrucken, because it's not like you would have been Michael, like Macholis Asuris on the level where you mamish don't know what you're doing. In my opinion, it's supposed to be more machmer, but at the same time, it's not the end of the world. Rav Sheshes explained the story a little bit better. He said, "Mai deshakol Bar Piyuli, what Bar Piyuli removed the iraisel Rabbi Yehuda is what it sounds like from the words of Rav Sheshes. Rabbi Yehuda would require you to remove midday raisa. Right? We have to be very careful with the language here. My deshakol Bar Piyuli, the irais Rabbi Yehuda is what Rabbi Yehuda would require you to take out midday raisa. So the Gemara says, Rav Sheshes, Michal Deshayir the Rabbanon Rabbi Yehuda. It sounds like Rabbi Yehuda has his chelik of what you have to remove midday raisa. There's also a chelik that he holds that you have to remove midday Rabbanon. Well, if that's the case, that even Rabbi Yehuda holds the midrabanan and you have to remove more. Elo do oirilei, come on oirilei. Shmuel had told Bar Piyuli, whoever trained you well, albeit l'shitas Rabbi Yehuda. But if even according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to remove more, so then what was Shmuel telling Bar Piyuli? Who trained Bar Piyuli? It sounds like somebody trained him. Even Shmuel acknowledged that. If even according to Rabbi Yehudi, he was supposed to have removed more. Elo the Gemara says, Rav Sheshes must have meant something else. Maida shakol Bar Piyuli, what Bar Piyuli removed was the iraisa l'divrei hakol. It's what everyone is in agreement with midday raisa you have to remove. Umaida shayir, but what he left behind was the Rabban and the Rameir. It's that chelik that Rameir holds you have to be moisiv. The Rabbi Yehuda, what about Rabbi Yehuda? Film the Rabban and Shari holds you only have to remove the Rabban. The bottom is by Piyuli removed, but you have to remove midday raisa. He left out this piece, that's the controversy that was debated between Rameh and Rabbi Yehuda. Bar Piyuli was clearly following the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, but Shmuel felt that he should have been machmer, and he should have gone like Rab Meir. Oichel migid hanasha. Amash Shmuel, another member of Shmuel. And this member of Shmuel is going to baglite us. It's going to be malava us until the end of the day. Lo asra Torah elo she'ala kaf pilvat. So the gid hanasha is the sciatic nerve. This is out of my lane, but it goes from the shedra all the way down the thigh to the foot of the animal. Says Shmuel, stating that it's not the whole gid hanasha, it's not that whole nerve that you have to remove, that's not allowed to be eaten. So it seems higher up on the thigh, there's a part of the thigh that's spoon-shaped, that's why it's called a kaf. Kaf is a spoon, so it's spoon-shaped. It's not a spoon. And the nerve that's in that part of the yerech, that's the part that needs to be removed. How do I know that, said Shmuel? It's a pasuk, shenemar, al kin lo yochel ne'yisrael es gid anosh asher al kaf ha-yorech. Right? It says dafka that part. This is Shmuel's Chiddush. A huge cooler, right? You can eat ganz geschmacka parts of the gid anosha. It's just the area that's on the kaf ha-yorech that you're not allowed to. Rav Papa heard what Shmuel said. He said, Kitano, it's nicht azoi pasha. It's a machlokes tanam. Now, what's this machlokes tanam? So we're going to see. It's not one of these machlokes tanaim where it's super black and white, but there's a machlokes tanam which is going to force us to start being mefarish psukim. One Tana is going to learn like 5 different limudim in the parsha of Gid Hanasha one way, the other is going to learn it another way. What's going to emerge is that one of the points of debate is how to taich al kaf ha-yorech. Could you taich it like Shmuel? Not taich it like Shmuel. Hence, it's going to emerge that this is really machlokes, whether or not it's true that the only part of Gid Hanasha you're not allowed to eat is the part that's on the kaf ha-yorech. Okay, Amr Papa. So again, what's this? Machlekes Tanaim. A brisa. Achloi ve'im by kizayis. So somebody ate the gid hanasha, the entire gid hanasha, but there was no kizayis. So the halacha is chayiv malchus. Why? It's a barrier. We saw that in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says, Achei by kizayis. Rabbi Yehuda was not mentioned in the Mishnah. He holds, Rabbi Yehuda was mentioned, but not this Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds that you have to eat a kizayis, and if you don't eat a kizayis, you're not going to be chayiv. Says it when my time in the Rabbanon. What's pshad in the Rabbanon? Biryahi. It's because it's a barrier. And being that it's a barrier, the Rabbanon hold a barrier is a Michael Chashav, and it's for that reason you're going to be chayiv. Rabbi Yehuda. What about Rabbi Yehuda? Achiluk Sivabeh. Rabbi Yehuda says Beryahim Beryaher. It says Al Kain Lo Yoichlu B'nei Yisrael Eskid Anasha, and Stam Achila always means that it has to be a kazai. So if it's not a kazai, it's not going to be chayiv. Rabbanon. Rabbanon ahi achila. What does do with the word achila? It's coming to teach me. Let's say the gid hanasha, the entire gid hanasha is bigger than a kazayis. It's 4 or 5 kazayim big. Va'achal chad kazayis, and you ate 8 kazayis of it. B'chayv, you're going to be chayv, like we saw in the Mishnah, right? That was also mentioned in the Mishnah. If you eat the whole gid hanasha, you chayv even if it's pachas mi kazayis because of the barrier. And if the gid hanasha was bigger than a kazayis, and you ate a kazayis of it, you're also going to be chayv. So achila is not coming to tell me that you're only chayv if it's a kazayis. It's not coming l'kul, it's coming to chumrah. That if you eat a kazayis of it, even if you didn't eat the whole gid hanasha, even then you're going to be chayv. So again, Rabbi Yehuda holds achila is teaching me it has to be kazayis. The Rabbanan are saying achila is teaching me that you're chayiv even if it's only a kazayis. What do you mean only a kazayis? Even if it's not the whole gid hanasha, it's not a barrier, even then you're going to be chayiv. For Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda knows this halacha, that you don't have to eat the entire gid hanasha and you chayav for a kazayis of it, from the words asher al kaf hayorech, and we learn from there that even if you only ate from the gid hanasha that was on the kaf hayorech, assuming it was a kazayis, that would be enough for you to be chayiv. So I know already you don't have to eat the entire gid hanasha. So what's achila coming to teach me? That it's coming to teach me that you have to eat a kazayis. And if you ate the entire gid hanasha and it was pachas kazayis, you would actually be Rabbanan. What did Rabbanan do with Asher al Kaf HaYarech? He's telling me they need achila to teach me you don't have to eat the whole gid hanasha. So what did they learn from Asher al Kaf HaYarech? Shmuel. This is what a papa meant. The Amar Shmuel Asra Torah Elosh al Kaf HaYarech. Al Kaf HaYarech is coming to teach me, it's coming to define what the gid hanasha is. It's not the entire nerve. It's only that area that's on the Kaf HaYarech. For Rabbi Yehuda, what's Rabbi Yehuda going to tell you? HaYarech Siv, the Kula Yarech. No. It says Asher al Kaf HaYarech, and HaYarech is actually mashma that it has to be the entire Yarech. Meaning it says Kaf HaYarech, not Kaf Yarech. HaYarech is mashma, it's the entire Yarech. So they disagree with that entire drasha. V'Rabbanan. What did Rabbanan do with the word HaYarech? Isn't it mashma the entire Yarech? So the Gemara says, Ahu, it's coming to teach me the Pashat Isurei Bekulei Yarech. That the Isser is on the entire Yarech, Lafuke Chitza and the light, as opposed to the outer gid. Remember there's the Pnimi and the Chitza. But at the end of the day, it has to be the chelik that's on the kaf. Tosfos says you can't read this Gemara, right? It's very hard to read this Gemara. For Rabbanan, Nahud the Pashat Isurei Bekula Yarech. We're just saying now that the Rabbanan sheet is, it's only the part that's on the kaf. What do you do with HaYarech? The Pashat Isurei. So Tosfos says clearly there's an issue with the Girsa here. Second Tosfos on the Amid, Loshen Isurei le'asi shaper, the le'asrinan elosh ala kaf bilvad. U'b'sefer Rabbeinu Gershom Ksiv the Mashech not Kulei Isurei, but the Mashech Bekulei Yarech. It's good. Then Tait says maybe it could be Miyashav the Gersa in the Gemara, but the point is that HaYarech is not coming to teach me that it has to be the entire gid, but it's coming to teach me which one of the gidin. It's the gid that goes along the entire Yarech, which is the gid ha-pnimi, as opposed to the one that doesn't, which is the gid ha-chitza. It says the Gemara in a side kasha. So we had 2 pshatim of what we learned from Asher al Kaf HaYarech. One was Shmuel's halacha, that you only chayev for the kaf. The other one was to teach me that if the kaf had a kazayas and you ate it, for that in itself you would be chayev. The Rabbanan learned you're only chayev for the chelik that's on the kaf. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you're really chayev for the entire gid. What is kaf teaching me? That if you only ate that part, you're going to be chayev. That's the kitanoi, the Rav Papa meant when he said Shmuel's halacha is really machlokes tanam. But the Gemara just has a postscript on both sheets, and that is v'hai kaf mi boile the mute the less. The less like kaf. I need kaf to teach me something else, to teach me there's no halach of gid hanashim when it comes to a bird. And the reason is because a bird doesn't have that kaf, he doesn't have that part of the meat that's shaped like a spoon. And for the Gemara, true, trey kaf ksivi. It says, Al ken lo yochel ne yisol es gid hanasha asher al kaf hayorech. Adayim Azeh, Kinoga Bechaf Yerech Yaakov Begid Anosh. It says the word kaf twice. It says the word kaf twice. One is coming to teach me Lamutei Oif, and the other one is coming to teach me this halacha that we just mentioned. Exhale. So as relates to Ray, going back to some Torah that we spoke about 7.5 years ago on Daf Tzadik Aleph, but with many, many, many chidusha. And that is, in the Shailas Teshuvah's Binyan Shloima, that was written, of course, by the great Dayan of Vilna, Rav Shloima HaKoyim of Vilna, the Baal Cheshek Shloima. So at the end of Chelik Beis, there's Likutim, there's different shtiklach that are ala Torah. In Parshas Vayishlach, Rav Shloima HaKoyim of Vilna asked, the pasuk says, by the love of Gid Anasha, al kein lo yoichlu b'nei Yisrael es Gid Anasha, asher al kaf hayorech ad hayoyim hazeh. Freit Rav Shlomo HaKohen Vilna. There isn't one loisa say in the entire Torah where the Torah says that this lav is ad hayoyim hazeh. And if that's the case, what exactly do those words mean? Truth is, the lashon of ad hayoyim hazeh you find in different places in the Torah. And Shitas Rashi, throughout his Pirush, is that ad hayoyim hazeh means forever. Meaning, if I'm sitting today and I'm studying this topic, you should know whatever the Torah said is still relevant today. That's usually what it means. But as it relates to Torah, Torah is nitzchias. And Torah, you don't have to tell me that it's ad hayom hazeh, because it's memela going to be ad hayom hazeh. If that's the case, then why would the Torah, by the love of Gid Anasha, mention the words ad hayom hazeh? It can't be to teach me the nitzchias HaTorah, because we know of the nitzchias HaTorah. By the way, that's why by no other mitzvah does it say ad hayom hazeh, because it's not necessary to say ad hayom hazeh. Some of these mitzvahs things, okay, you have to know, it's true ad hayom hazeh. But as it relates to Torah mitzvahs, it's anyways ad hayom hazeh. And that's why you never find that lashon by Torah mitzvahs. Yet, when it comes to the Gid Anasha, you do. Freit Rav Shlomo HaKohen Vilna, why did the Torah say these words? Al kein lo yoichlu b'nei Yisrael es Gid Anasha asher al kaf hayorech ad hayom hazeh. And he says two pshatim, both really would be kedai to talk about now for the next 20 or so minutes. Stating that, we're going to mention the second, that Rav Shlomo HaKohen Vilna prefaces by saying, nearly the yashav al pi derech hadrosh. But in order to properly understand the Binyan Shloima's second mahalach, we need a little bit of a hakdama. He already touches on the hakdama, but I think it's kedai to be marchiv a little bit. And that is, 7.5 years ago, on Daf Tzadik Aleph, we said over from the Chassam Sofer, often on the Gemara Daf Tzadik Aleph Amid Aleph in the Chidushin on Masechtas Chulin, that there's some connection between the lav of Gid Hanasha and Tisha B'Av. We're still in Chodesh Av. There's some connection between the lav of Gid Hanasha and Tisha B'Av. And really it comes from the Zohar HaKadosh. Even though the Chassam Sofer doesn't quote the Zohar HaKadosh, but that's Kedarke BaKodesh that he very rarely quoted the Zohar. But really, the makar to this is from the Zohar HaKadosh. Obviously, it's in Parshas Vayishlach, and I think it's kedai to just see a few excerpts from the Zohar, then we'll build up to the specific part that the Hilchos Chassam Sofer was quoting. The Zohar HaKadosh says that when the Malach came to fight against Yaakov Avinu, he was having a very difficult time. We know that the Malach was Sarish Alesav, the Samach Mem, who was Satan, right? He is the source of all evil. The evil inclination himself is who it was that was fighting Keneged Yaakov Avinu. And Yaakov Avinu is the Bechira Avis, and he had no ability, he had no capacity to be able to get him. He was struggling. They were wrestling physically, that's the muscle. But there was some spiritual tug-of-war that was going on over here. And Yaakov was very much winning this fight. The Samach Mem was struggling mightily. Says the Zohar, "V'kivan is the im Yaakov like ashkach aser the yochelis gabar le the Yaakov." When he was fighting with Yaakov, he couldn't find like an angle, a way to try to get to him. Begin, and the reason was the chol shayfi gufa sayli Yaakov, because all the Ivarim of Yaakov Avinu were engaged in this fight, and the Ivarim of Yaakov were able to trump over the Samach Mem. V'kulu avet kifin, and all the Ivarim of Yaakov were very, very strong. V'leihavi b'han chulsha, and there wasn't one Ivar of Yaakov Avinu that had any shvachkeit, that had any chulsha, and as a result, he couldn't be successful. Not Avad. What did Sarish Alesav do? Vayiga b'kaf yirechai. What he did was he touched Kaf Yerechai. And what does it mean? He touched Kaf Yerechai. It means Begid Hanasha. He touched the Gid Hanasha. Why did that help him? Because that's Bezine B'Yetzahara. Because the Gid HaNasha, you ready for this? Is where the Yetzer Hara is inside the guf. You ever wonder, where is the Yetzer Hara? Feels like he's everywhere. But where is he's here, there, and everywhere. Up, down, right? But where is he in the guf of the person? Zok the Zohar HaKadosh. He's in the Gid HaNasha. The Iyu Zine v'Asrei. Zine means he's Minoi, Asrei means Mekoimoi. This is his place. Umitaman asi Yetzer Hara al bnei Nasha. And it's from there that the Yetzer Hara does what he does, that he's able to go up against people. And he went to that spot because that's a place that he calls home. That's a place that he has epis shaykhis, even in Yaakov Avinu. Because Yaakov Avinu with his grace and madregas, but at the same time he had a Yetzer Hara. And being that the place of his Yetzer Hara was the Gid HaNasha, that was the place he was able to krich in, and that's where he was able to have some sort of shlita, and that's what it means when it says in the pasuk Vayiga bekaf Yerechai, he was able to touch Kaf Yerechai because that was a place that he was called. Ubegin kach, says the Zohar HaKadosh. Amrei Reis the Torah said, Lo yoichlu b'nei Yisrael es Gid HaNasha. It's for that reason that we're not allowed to eat the Gid HaNasha. It's because the Gid HaNasha was the place that the Samach Mem was able to be shoylet in Yaakov Avinu. And being that he had shlita in that area, all the Gid HaNashas of people and even of animals suddenly are somewhat pogum as a result. And it's for that reason no one's allowed to eat from the Gid HaNasha. On an even simpler level, the Gid HaNasha is the makom where the Yetzer Hara is. So this is a place that's very sitra achadik, and it's for that reason Al Kein Lo Yochel Yisrael as Gid HaNasha. That's why you're not allowed to eat from the Gid HaNasha. I'm skipping a little bit. There is the Bar Nash, says the Zohar HaKadosh, Shin Samachei Gidin. Every person has 365 Gidin. Ulekableihoin Shin Samachei Pikudin. The lav inun is yov and connected the 365 gidin. There's also 365 lavin. There's 248 esen. There's 365 lavin. Ulikabel shin samechei yom meshata. There's also 365 days in the solar year. The hot Tisha B'av chad min hoin, and one of those 365 days is Tisha B'av. The iyu likavel samech mem aleph lamed is connected. The samech mem the iyu chad mi inun shin samechei malach. It was one of the 365 malach. What does that mean? The Mefarshei Azar say there are 365 days of the year. Every day has his own malach. So there's 365 malachim together with the 365 days. In other words, there are 365 gidin, there are 365 lavin, there are 365 days, and there are 365 malachim. And these are all interrelated with each other. The lav of Gid HaNasha and the day of Tisha B'av and the Gid of the Gid HaNasha and the Malach of the Samach Mem, they're all within 1 out of 365. They all converge. They're all on the same day. Ubegin kach amrei raisa. It's for that reason the Torah said, Lo yoichlu b'nei Yisrael es Gid HaNasha. Es is always the rabbis. Right? Shimon Amsuni Hayudarish Kalesin Shabbatayra. Rabbi Akiva said, "As Hashem lekachatira." What's Eskid HaNasha coming to be marba? Laskar Tisha B'av. It's coming to be marba Tisha B'av. The lo achlim beveloi shasin. Where that's a day also that you're not allowed to eat and you're not allowed to drink. And the Sfarim HaKadoshim say Es is Rosh Hashanah Tisha B'av backwards, right? So Es is l'Rabbis Tisha B'av. Ubegin kach chazak u'tzebrichu koila. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw already in the Torah what's going to happen in the Aseh, and that is that the Beis Hamikdash is going to be charev. The nirbas v'hain remes liYaakov, and he gave Yaakov a remes v'yavek ish imoy b'chol yoy meishata u'b'chol shayfen di Yaakov v'lei ashkach bar me'ahu Gid HaNasha miyad toshash cheli di Yaakov u'b'yoy meishata ashkach yoy Tisha B'av the be'izkes ordina alona v'ichra v'bei mikdash, and this ultimately caused a destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. It says the Zohar HaKadosh that what happened was the Malach, the Samach Mem, was trying to get Yaakov Avinu. He couldn't get Yaakov Avinu. But there was one place he was able to be shoylet. But here's the oimek. It was one gid that he was able to get him in, and that's the Gid HaNasha. Because iyu zine va'asrei. That's minoi u'mekoimoi. And there was one day that he was able to be shoylet. Which day is that? It's the day of Tisha B'av. Because again, that's his day. That's the one day that he's able to get to. And it's for that reason, being that he was able to krich into the Gid HaNasha, and the day that he's able to get is Tisha B'av, Al Kein Lo Yoichel B'nei Yisrael es Gid HaNasha. There's now a lav of Gid HaNasha, and that lav is the one of 365 that's going to correspond with this Torah, and it's also for that reason the Beis Hamikdash was charev on Tisha B'av, because that's the day, and that's the shaychus between the Gid HaNasha and the Tisha B'av. That's the Es L'Rabbis. Again, it's the Malach the Samach Mem on the day of Tisha B'Av, kriechen into the Gid Hanasha, which is now going to be related to the Lav and the Torah of Gid Hanasha, and then the Zohar Kodesh Kfir Zois, v'chol man da'achol b'Tisha B'Av, ki'ilu achol Gid Hanasha. Any person that eats on Tisha B'Av, it's as if he ate the Gid Hanasha. Dvarim Neflam. As Zoy state in Zohar Kodesh in Parshas Vayishach. This is the rest of the story. This is the Zohar Kodesh that Chassam Sofer was referencing over there in Masechtas Chulin Daf Tzadik Aleph. But here's the point. The point is that you see clearly that the Isser, the Lav of the Gid Hanasha, is something that's predicated on a certain shlita, a certain koyach that the Samach Mem has, a certain koyach that the Samach Mem had in Yaakov Avinu. Samach Mem was trying to be Shaila, and Yaakov Avinu, he couldn't be Shaila. There's one day, there's one Gid that he was able to be Shaila. The day is Tisha B'Av, the Gid is the Gid Hanasha. That is the Shayches between Tisha B'Av and the Gid Hanasha. Lo yiroi zeh k'roi zeh, v'lo yiroi zeh k'roi zeh. Hatzad ha'shav shebehen. Tisha B'Av is a day, it's 1 out of 365. The Gid Hanasha is a Gid, it's 1 out of 365. And this is the day and the Gid that Samach Mem was able to be Shailat in. Because the Samach Mem is a Malach, he gets 1 day to be Shailat, he gets 1 Gid to be Shailat in. The day that he's Shailat in is Tisha B'Av, the Gid that he's Shailat in is the Gid Hanasha, and that is the Shayches, Dvarim Neflam Adamoi. That is the Shayches between the Gid Hanasha and between the day of Tisha B'Av. But the whole concept of there being an Issa Gid Hanasha, it's predicated on a certain shlita, that the Samach Mem has in mankind, that certain shlita that really started with this great Ma'isa of a similar banim, the Vayovek Ish Imoy, that took place between Yaakov Avinu and between Sarah Shalesa. Demis is what the Chassam Sofer writes in Chulin Daf Tzadik Aleph when he talks about this inyan is really something that permeates his farm. In fact, the Chassam Sofer doubled down on this inyan. Chassam Sofer says a chiddush. Chassam Sofer says that I want to take it a step further. I believe that the Vayovek Ish Imoy that took place between Yaakov Avinu and Sarah Shalesav, you know what day of the year was on the calendar? It happened on Tisha B'Av. That whole Maisa happened on Tisha B'Av. Now you're going to tell me, isn't it a Mefurish Zayir? No, it's rather not a Mefurish Zayir. I mean, it definitely comes from the Zayir, but the Chassam Sofer is the one that said it. The reason it's a chiddush is because in Rishonim it's actually not mashva that way. As a matter of fact, we say in the Piyut at the end of the Seder, the first night of Pesach, so in the Piyut of Az Roiv Nisan Hiflesa, Hifchadet to Arami Be'emesh Laila, which is very mashma that it actually happened on Leil Pesach. And as they state in Rekeach, they're under that say that it happened on Yom Kippur. Reb David Yoel Weiss and the God Mechadashim has a whole arichas. What night did this take place? Did it happen on Pesach? Did it happen on Yom Kippur? And the Torah, the Chassam Sofer, and he brings it as almost exclusively from the Beis Medrash of the Chassam Sofer, that it actually happened on Tisha B'Av. Now this Zohar HaKadosh is very, very mashma that way. By the way, we know Tisha B'Av and Pesach are somewhat related. Kiyadu, the Ram already brings it. That's why you eat the egg, the avelos. But the bottom line is that from the Chassam Sofer is mavur this connection on even another level, and that is that the story actually took place when? It took place on Tisha B'Av. A few places where the Chassam Sofer mentions this. So one is in the old Chassam Sofer's Teras Moshe. So this is on Daf Chavav. If you have the new Teras Moshe's, so this is right at the end of Parshas Dvarim. After the Haftarah, there's a few pieces on Tisha B'Av. This is the last piece. The pasuk says, "V'chara api boy b'yoyim mahu." V'chara api boy b'yoyim mahu, which is referring on some level to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. Dr. Hilgi Chassam Sofer, Mamish Dvarim Nifla Madlamoy. He says, we know the Rambam says in Perik Tes Halach Alav and Hilchas Malachim that Shisha mitzvahs nitztava Adam Arisha. Then he goes through the shalshelas of how the mitzvahs eventually, progressed, how they were disseminated. Noach was nitztava, 7th mitzvah, the mitzvah of Evim Menachah. And then he says Avram Avinu got the next mitzvah, that was the mitzvah of Milah. The next mitzvah after that somebody was nitztava was what? It's the mitzvah of Gid Hanasha, that was given to Yaakov Avinu. Right, if you open up a Sefer HaChinuch, the first mitzvah is Puruvu, that was told to Adam, Chava, Noach. And the second mitzvah is Milah, third mitzvah, Shloi Lechel, Gid Hanasha. It's the third mitzvah in the Torah. In the Mispar of the Rambam, with the way the Rambam goes through the shalshalos of the mitzvahs, it was 6 plus 1, the Sheva Mitzvah Ne'nayach, plus Mila, and what was the 9th mitzvah? The 9th mitzvah was the mitzvah of Gid HaNasha. The 9th mitzvah ever given was the mitzvah of Gid HaNasha. We know that Gid HaNasha Zok Soif is related to Tisha B'Av, Kimavur, and of course the Kimavur is the Zayra HaKadosh, and the Maisa happened on Tisha B'Av Zok Chasam Soifer. If that's the case, it comes out that the mitzvah of Gid HaNasha, the Loisa say, is the Chias Shebet It's the 9th mitzvah in count, and it also happened on the 9th day of the year. 9 times 9 is 81, which is the gematria of Af. This is a remez to this thing. Because really, the Gid HaNasha is very much associated with Tisha B'Av. S, Gid HaNasha, S is L'Rabbi's Tisha B'Av. There's a remez to Tisha B'Av in the Torah, in the parish of the Gid HaNasha, and that's the V'chara Api Boy B'Yom Mahu, and that's why you always find Af in reference to Tisha B'Av. It's because 81, this is the Chias Shebet Chias. This is reminiscent, of course, of the Chasam Sofer that we've spoken about Mila. Right, Talmud Chacham has to have... He has to have Gaiva, Shmina, Sheva Shminis, and the Chasam Sofer says, because it's Yodua, that any person that Shomer is bris, so he's allowed to be a Bal Gaiva about it. That's one area that a person is allowed to have Gaiva, and he says the Shmina, Sheva Shminis is a reference to Bris Mila. Why is it reference to Mila? Because we know Shmina happens, Mila is on the 8th day, right? Bayom HaShmini, and it's the 8th mitzvah that was Even Nitztava, because the first mitzvah, Nach the Sheva Mitzvah Ne'nach, was Avram Avinu when he was in this, and he said, that's the Shmina, Sheva Shminis. This is Mamish, the Shmina, Sheva Shminis is Mila, the Chias Shebet Chias is referring to the Gid HaNasha, but the bottom line is another place where the Chasam Sofer says this thing. I just want to mention one more. This is so nifladig. It's a nish tzegloiben in the Welt. And if you're not sure, listen to how the Chasam Sofer prefaces this shtickle Torah. So again, the pasuk says, "Vayovek ish imay adaloi sashach, vayarki lo yochaloi, vayiga bekaf yerechoi, vateka kaf yerech Yaakov behe'ofka imay, vayarki lo yochaloi, vayiga bekaf yerechoi." It's Yodua that the Mefarshim explain that this is related to Churban Beis Hamikdash. This is one of the places the Chasam Sofer says this Chiddush, that the actual battle took place on Tisha B'Av. Vateka kaf Yerech Yaakov hu Beis Hamikdash, and when it says Yerech Yaakov, what's the Yerech Yaakov? It's referring to the Beis Hamikdash. Yurechon shel Yisrael umatzah. Zok the Chasam Sofer. Va'anachnu rimaznu me'asheniglo lonu misoid Hashem li'yireyev. We came up with a remez that was nigla to us misoid Hashem li'yireyev. This is not my remez. I'm telling you something that was given to me as a gift. By the way, if you look at the Chasam Sofer in Arichaim Simon Reish Ches, he talks about the whole Indian of Seid Hashem li'yireyev. We're under a hell that it's related maybe to Gilui Eliyahu. It's not Gilui Eliyahu. He said, but when a person learns Torah in the right way, he's zoichet to things that he has no business knowing. So Chasam Sofer L'Shitasi, this is what he means. But I'll call upon him. Ma'asheniglo lanu misoid Hashem li'yireyev. Zok the Chasam Sofer. Chazal say, Vayovek yishimoy. We learn from this shehelu avak ad kisei hakavod, that the avak, the dust from the battle, it got to a level that it went all the way up to the Kisei HaKavod. What does it mean it went up to the Kisei HaKavod? What's the taitch of that? Shehelu avak ad Kisei HaKavod. Listen to this. Chazal say that why is tzitzis tcheles? Because tcheles is doima the yam is doima the rikia, and the rikia is doima to the Kisei HaKavod. Which means, uri'isa moisa yuschartim eschol mitzvah Hashem means, you're supposed to remember, Zok the Chasam Sofer, the yam, the Rekia, and the Kisei HaKavod. I think everyone that learns the Gemara understands Uri'isa Moisa Uschartim the Kisei HaKavod. But how do I get from my tzitzis to the Kisei HaKavod? Tchelis doimel yam doimel Rekia doimel Kisei HaKavod. Cut out the middleman, and ultimately you're trying to get to the Kisei HaKavod. But Chazal don't say that. Chazal say that when you look at the tzitzis, Tchelis doimel yam, and yam is doimel Rekia, and Rekia is doimel Kisei HaKavod. Vaistois, there's Uri'isa Moisa Uschartim on yam, and on Rekia, and on Kisei HaKavod. Dr. Chasam Sofer, we know that when we give and bestow Kedusha upon a Kadosh Baruch Hu, we're Mishalshim B'Kedusha. We say Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. The Medrash says in Vayikra Rabbah, this is right in the beginning of Parshas Kedosh and Chav Daled Ches. Rab Abin Amar, Mashal B'nei Medina she'asu Gimel HaTaris LaMelech. When we say Kadosh, 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 like Kadosh Baruch Hu, you want to compare it with a Mashal? It's like the Bnei Medina that give the Melech 3 crowns. Ma'asa Melech. What did the Melech do? Nasam B'Rosh HaYachas. He took one of the crowns, Ushtayim B'Rosh Shalbanov, and he gave 2 of the crowns to his sons. Kach. B'chol yoim v'yoimel yoim machtim lakadosh baruch hu gimel kedushos. Ma kadosh baruch hu oiseh. Noisen b'roishei achas. He keeps 1 for himself. V'shtayim b'roishin shal Yisrael. And the other 2 he gives Klal Yisrael. Hado d'chsiv daber al kol adas b'nei Yisrael kedoshim tiyu v'yiskadishtem v'yisim kedoshim. These are the 3 things. So we say kadosh, kadosh, kadosh tzvayikar rabba. David says, I'm taking 1 of them, but the other 2 I'm giving to you. So what are these 3 kedushas? Zok the Heilig Chassam Sofer. He says, Klal Yisrael, we're niskadish b'Torah mitzvahs. Asher kedishanu b'mitzvahs. Every time we do a mitzvah, it's because the Torah kedusha and mitzvahs are kedusha. So we have Torah mitzvahs. That's kedusha. The whole Torah, the Taryag is kedusha. That's one kedusha we got. But then there's another ma'ila. Kadesh atzmecha b'mutalach. Kedoshim tiyu. That's what the medrash is on that pasuk. So kedoshim tiyu. There's an Indian that you have to be a kadesh atzmecha b'mutalach. That's another toisefes kedusha. So with the exception, besides the fact that every year is on a level of kedusha, then there's the tzaddikim, the Chassidim that are on the madrega of Kadosh Atzmo Mutalach, and that's already a higher madrega. And then there's the 3rd level of Kedusha, that's the Eibishter's Kedusha. That's something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has Bel Yoinim, that's something the Eibishter kept for himself, that's what he didn't give us. So we say, the Malachim say, Kadosh, 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 Zok HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shkoyach. Malach, you say Kadosh, 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 1 Kedusha I'm keeping for myself, and that's the Kedusha that's Bel Yoinim. But 2 of the Kedushas I'm going to give my children. B'ni B'chayri Yisrael. And then Kedoshim Tiyu, there's going to be an Indian of Kadesh Atzmecha b'Mutalach. Zok T'chsam Sofer. Torah mitzvahs are always referred to as the Yam. It's Rechava Mine Yam. So many psukim that refer to it as the Yam. Tzadikim, says T'chsam Sofer, is Yodua that they're referred to as Shamayim. T'chsam Sofer teaches, the pasuk says, Mishamayim hibit Hashem ro'es kol bnei Adam. Chazal say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is dan the door lefi the ma'aseh hatzadikim. What does that mean? Mishamayim hibit Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at the tzadikim and then ras chol bnei adam. He knows how to go ahead and judge bnei adam. But he says it's you do the tzadikim are referred to as Shamayim. Ramosha Shlom Yakim Oitzus Chasam Sofer. By the way, this whole piece is in Oitzus Chasam Sofer. Parshas Vayishlach Daf Chav Gimel. If you're going to look it up, that's the place to look it up. On Daf Chav Gimel because it has all the pitchufkis, the footnotes and the footnotes, Ben Benoshel footnotes. But I'll put them over there on page Chav Gimel. Moshe Shlomek is mitzayin that really this Indian that the Chassam Sofer says is Yodu, it comes from Darizal. This comes from the Bismedrash of Dari. This is a classic place where the Chassam Sofer, again, he never quoted Svarim of Mikubalim, Eliasip and Staris, but this is a piece that's laced with Kabbalah. And Darizal Taich, Hazinu Hashamayim, V'adabeira v'sish ma'aretz imrei free. Hazinu hashamayim heinu ha'noshim ha'tzadikim ha'ktoishim asher ba'aretz. Heim adoimim l'malachim ha'yoshvim b'shamayim. V'sish ma'aretz imrei free ha'om shem amei ha'aretz. But al kopanim, Zok T'chsam Sofer, we know there what's referred to as shamayim. And the kedusha el yoyne v'sliktin shamayim, that's by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's the kisei HaKavod. That when a person sees his tzitzis, he's supposed to remember. What are you supposed to remember? You're supposed to remember the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. You're supposed to remember the 2 Kedushas that you have, and the 1 Kedusha of us is by the Eibishter. Tchelis is doimel yam. The Torah mitzvahs, that's Rechavim min yam. The yam, doimel rakia. That's referring to the tzaddikim, azinu hashamayim. That's referring to the madrega of Kedusha that only the Kedoshim have. Kedoshim tiyu, that's what that's referring to. And the rakia is doimel lakisi hakavod. That's going to bring you to the 3rd madrega. It's going to bring you to the 3rd, and it's going to bring you to the highest madrega. When Sari Shaleisov came and he fought with Yaakov Avinu, what's he championing with? The Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. That's what he's championing with Kiyadua. That's the Yerech, right? That's the Iver, Ha'adam Neneboy, the Iver Atashmish, right? That's where he's championing. He's going up. He's championing Zech very much with the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. Val shloshtam tzofa Esav v'sar shaloi. Ubikesh la'avda mine Yaakov. L'chein vayei ovek. He was Vayei Avek. He didn't just fight with him. He was Vayei Avek because he was going after the 3 Kedushas. Avak is Rosh Tevis Elokim b'ma'oin kodshoy. He's going after the Kisei HaKavod. Shu Kedusha al-Yoyne shebebeis HaMikdash. V'keneged beis Kedusha is hanoisorim ha'toyru v'tzadikim shenitnu la'aretz. The tzadikim that are really shamayim, but they live on this world. Nirmaz Kedoshim asher ba'aretz. Rosh Tevis Avak. V'asamich mem rotzel la'orim medonim aleinu. Rosh Tevis im kofat ba'af. Again, Rosh Tevis avak. Omnam b'chol zois. Zok T'chsam Sofer. B'chol zois. Like pa lashkichenu ha-Torah HaKdosha. He tried so hard. He tried being poil in the Torah HaKdosha. He wasn't able to be poil in the Torah HaKdosha. Ki alecha iragnu kol hayoyim. Even he couldn't do it. Nobody was able to do it. And the tzaddikim, Zoktach Sam Sefer Lei Almin Yisrael mit tzaddikim, sheshasam HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chol dar v'dar. Where was the Samach Mem Matzliach? He was Matzliach that he was able to go after the Yerech. What's the Yerech? That's Yerechon Shal Yisrael. That's the Beis HaMikdash. That's the Shaykhis between this whole story of the Gid HaNosha and Tisha B'Av, because when he was able to be Poil, he was able to Poil the Churban Beis HaMikdash. You know what he was able to get? He was able to cheper with the Kisei HaKavod. Heramaisa, he couldn't go after Kedushas Yisrael, because Chal Yisrael, you're not taking my Torah mitzvahs. He couldn't even get the tzaddikim because like Almin Yisrael. Every dar, even this dar, every single dar has tzaddikim. Chasam himself lived 200 years ago. Every single dar has tzaddikim. Like Almin Yisrael, you can't go after the tzaddikim. About Kadosh Baruch Hu, this was the raid we spoke about. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Mizmar la'asav likim bo gad benach l'secha. You want my Kisei HaKavod, I'm going to give you my Kisei HaKavod. And we know that as long as there's a churban in this world, ain't Shmoi Shalom, ain't Kisei Shalom, Achi Machi Zar Shalom Alik. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave up his Kisei. That's the one thing that he was able to get to. The one thing he was able to get was the Kisei HaKavod. And Zoktach Sam Soifer, that's what the Gemara means when it says, Vayeyavek Ishima, Zoktach Gemara Chulin Tzadik Aleph, Melamed Shehela Avak Ad Kisei HaKavod. Because he was going after the Kadosh. He tried getting the Yam. He tried getting the Rakia, he couldn't get it. You know what he was able to get? He was able to get the Kisei HaKavod. But here's the punchline. V'zeu zoktach Sam Sofer. Yerech. This is Yerech. The pasuk says, Vayiga, Vateka Kaf Yerech. Right? He went after the Yerech of Yaakov. Yerech is Rosh Tevis, Yam, Rakia, and Kisei. It's these three things. Tchelis is Daimel Yam. Yam is Daimel Rakia, and the Rakia is Daimel Kisei HaKavod. He was going after these three Kedushas. He was going after the Yerech. Abalam Naisi was unsuccessful. Partially. Where was his success? It wasn't with the Yam, with the Torah and the Mitzvahs. It wasn't with the Rakia. He couldn't get after the Tzaddikin. But what he was able to get was the Kisei HaKavod. Zoktach Sam Sofer, that's the Taich. Vayiga bekaf Yerechai. Bekaf shel HaYerech. He was able to get the kaf of the Yerech. The Yud of the Yerech he couldn't get. The Yam he couldn't touch. The Reish of the Yerech he couldn't get. Vayiga bekaf Yerechai, he was able to get the kaf. Haroim is l'kisei shom noga v'nir mikdashay vateka kaf Yerech Yaakov be'yof ke'imot. That's the oimik of what's going on over here. Zoktach Sam Sofer, I'm being honest with you, this is not my shtickle Torah. V'anachna rimaznu ma'shenigla lanu misoid Hashem li'reif. I'm telling you what was niskala to me. That's the oimik. Vayiga bekaf Yerechai, he's going after the Yerech. It's the Yam, Rakia, and the Kisei HaKavod from that Gemara that we've heard 1,000 times. It's the three Kedushos, and the two Kedushos by Klal Yisrael. That ayin toiv towards Klal Yisrael that Chasam Sofer has, that he couldn't touch, because we kedoshim ke'alecha yiragnu kol hayoyim, because like Almin Yisrael every dar has tzaddikim. But Vayiga, where was he successful? It was the kaf Yerechai. That's where he was able to happen in the kaf, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, "I'll let you cheper with my Beis Hamikdash. You're not taking my Klal Yisrael. You're not taking my Torah mitzvahs. But if you want to go after them, that's already something you can do." But al kapanim, this is an Inyan that permeates Torah Chasam Sofer, permeates really the Sfarim HaKtochim. It's rooted in Zohar HaKadosh and Parshas Vayishlach. The whole Yesod of Gid HaNosha. It's related to Tisha B'Av, Esses, the Rabbis Tisha B'Av. It's related to Churban Beis HaMikdash. And really Shrosha is, because on some level, Vayiga Bekaf Yerechai, that the Samech Mem was able to be shoylet in the Kaf of Yerech. He was able to be Poigim in one of the three Kedushos. The Kedusha, that's Kisei HaKavod, that's Vayovik. Malamit Shelo, Avak Ad Kisei HaKavod. The Isser of the Gid HaNosha is somewhat associated with a shlita that the Samech Mem has, on man in this world. We're traveling from Prishbarg all the way to the Litvisha world. We're going to Vilna now. The pasuk says, "Al Kain lo yoichlu b'nei Yisrael es Gid HaNosha asher al kaf hayorech ad hayoyim hazeh lulei de mistafina." Those are his words. He says, "Lulei de mistafina." I would say that we know zeh is always when you could look something between the eyes, you could see it. Olam hazeh is referred to as olam hazeh. Olam haba is v'hayu b'yoyim hahu, because you can't see it. You don't have it in front of you, but we believe we're maminim b'nei maminim that one day there's going to be another world, and in that world it's going to be perfect. Ubila mavis lanetzach, and in that world everything is going to be gewaldic. The whole Isra of the Gid HaNosha, Zokta Cheshik Shloima, in Binyan Shloima, the Likud and the Chelik Beis is based on a certain memshala, a certain shlita that the Samach Mem has on this world. If that's the case, Lulei the Mistafina. Afilu l'man Omar ein mitzvahs b'teilos la'asad la'avod. But it could be the Gedanosh is different. You know why the Gedanosh is different? Because the whole Yisoid of the Issa Gedanosh and Nemtzach, from the fact that there's a shlita on the Samach Mem in this world, Minei, Mekoimoi, Ekrichzich, he lives in the Gedanosh, and that's where all the tzaras come from. And ain't Shmoy Shalom, ain't Kisay Shalom. That's the world that we live in now. But what's going to be when the Samach Mem is going to be gone over and done with? When we're not going to have to deal with that clown anymore. What's going to be when that's all going to be over? Oh, at that point, when that's all going to be over, the Gedanosh is going to be like all the 365 Ivar. You're not going to have to worry anymore. It's Al Kain Lo Yoichu B'nei Yisrael Gedanosh Asher Al Kafa Yorich Adayim Mazeh Fakert. Adayim Mazeh means Dafke Ba'al Mahadeh. It means Dafke in this world. Because V'hoya B'yoyim Ahu, it's going to be Ubila Amavis LaNetzach. And when it's going to be Ubila Amavis LaNetzach, at that point, this is not something you're going to have to worry about anymore. The whole Yisoid of Gedanosh and Nemtzach and Churban and Nemtzach and Tisha B'Av and Nemtzach, it's related to the fact in Kisei Shalom that it went at Kisei HaKavod. It's because Vayiga B'Kaf Yerecha, the Kaf of the Yerech is incomplete because ain't Kisei Shalom. Aber, this is all going to come to an end. And with this is going to come to an end. At that point, Lulei de Mistafina. This comes from the Litvish world. This is the Binyan Shloima, the Palcheshik Shloima, who has tshuvas that are as litvish as they come throughout Sefer Binyan Shloima. So ich gesagt, Yesh Shloima al derech Shul Shvui de Mistafina, that the Issa Gedanosh is Dafka the Yemazeh. All other mitzvahs, yes, Machlokes, Betelis, Loi Betelis, Las Loi. But I feel the man Damei mitzvah Betelis, Las Loi. When it comes to the Issa Gedanosh, it's going to be different. Just to end with one fascinating postscript to all this, and that is, we know a few hundred years ago, there was a false messianic movement of Shapsai Tzvi. One of the things that the followers of Shapsai Tzvi instituted was they all were eating Gedanosha. They all ate Gedanosha. And the reason is because they believed that Shapsai Tzvi was already the Olam HaTikon. And because it was the Olam HaTikon, the Issa Gedanosha is not going to be relevant anymore. And Rabbi Akademnin and his Bikoirasin on what was going on in the world of Shapsai Tzvi, if you know, you know, this was a big part of what Rabbi Akademnin was talking about, and they're shechting animals, and they're not being menakir anymore, the Gedanosha, because they believe, based on the Zohar, Al Kain Lo Yoichel B'nei Yisrael, Es Gedanosha, Es is the Rabbi's Tisha B'Av. And just like there's no Tisha B'Av, right? We know that the Katshap Tzvi, they stopped fasting Tisha B'Av. So just like there's no Tisha B'Av now, so there's no Es L'Rabbi. He said, the whole pasuk, the whole Gedanosha is not a Geya. It's because the Gedanosha is associated with the fact that we're living now in a world of Golus. We're living in a world with the Samach Mem Shlita, of in the Olam HaTikon, there's not going to be Gedanosh anymore. And that's really mamish with this. Binyan Shlomo doesn't quote this, but this is where the Binyan Shlomo is coming from. It's coming from a factual mitzias where you saw that the Mekubalim in the 17th century was some gewillt of it with this whole Shapsai Tzvi movement. This was the first move that they made. What Shaykh is Gedanosha? It's because there's actually a very, very deep connection between the Gedanosha and with Tisha B'Av. We should be Zoichet Taka to a day we'll be able to sit down and we'll be able to eat Nachamol from the Gedanosha. By the way, we spoke out for a guy in Reb David Yoel Shlita a few days ago that he said that the Issa Gedanosha was an oynish for the Bnei Yisrael. Right? It was an oynish, they weren't Malav Yaakov. He said, but it has no time anyways. So we spoke out that he said that it used to have a time based on the Archaim HaKadosh. The reason there's no time is dafka because of the Siluk HaShechina, because tam, like the Baal Shem Tov writes in the Tzavah, tam comes from the nitzutz of Kedusha. At the end of that piece, Dr. Goyin Reb David Yoel Shlita, that, the Sfarim HaKadoshim say, the Binyan Shlomo, there's this Inyan that, Asad Lavai, you're going to be able to eat the Gedanosh again. He says, what's the big deal? You're going to be able to eat the Gedanosh again. You'll be able to eat it. Ain't begidim b'nois tam. We're about to start the sugyas now. Ain't begidim b'nois tam. So if it's ain't begidim b'nois tam, who cares? You're going to be able to eat it. So David Yoel, the only reason it had no time is because of the fact that we're living in a world of Samach Mem. But in the Olam HaTikun, it's going to be Hadrul Aduchte, it's going to have tam all over again. So we should be Zoicha to be able to eat from the Sudas Alav Yasan with Tinyayin HaMeshomer. We should be Zoicha to be able to eat from the Gedanosha. You gotta say this, we should be Zoicha to be able to eat from the Gedanosha, and it should be Yesh Begidim Benois and Tam, when it's going to be Ubila Hamavis LaNetzach, and it's going to be Shmoy Shalom, the Kisoy Shalom, the Bias Goel Tzedek, B'mher B'yemenu Amen.